Mom always chose my sister, and for a long time I thought the reason was something wrong with me, until one day I heard a sentence that turned everything upside down. For as long as I can remember, there was an invisible scale in our family, one by which my sister and I were judged completely differently. When I brought home a 92, Mom asked why it wasn't a 100. When my sister brought home a 75, Mom hugged her and told her how proud she was that she at least tried. For a long time I just believed I was weaker, less talented, less likable, less deserving of the warmth Mom gave my sister freely and measured out to me so sparingly. I remember one specific moment from childhood that haunted me for years. I was about 7, my sister 9. We fought over a toy, and she shoved me so hard I split my knee open on the table leg. Mom came running at my scream, saw the blood on my leg, and the first thing she said wasn't "What happened, sweetheart?" It was "Stop screaming like that, you scared your sister." I sat on the floor, holding my split open knee, watching Mom comfort my sister, who wasn't even crying. Over the years, so many moments like that piled up that I stopped counting them. Dad, for his part, always tried to balance out the unfairness somehow. He was the one who showed up to my school plays when Mom couldn't make it, the one who praised my grades like he was trying to make up for Mom's coldness with double the warmth. But a kid always gravitates toward the love they're missing, not the love they already have. So I carried all my childhood and teenage pain mostly because of Mom, not because of anything lacking from Dad. I grew up, moved out, built my own life, and over time I learned to stop picking apart Mom's behavior every single time. I just accepted it as a settled fact, something like a dull, chronic ache you can live with as long as you don't press on it too hard. My sister got married 2 years before I did, to a guy named Mark, calm, dependable, practically the perfect son-in-law in the family's eyes. Mom cried at my sister's wedding like she was marrying off her only daughter. I sat at the table, smiling for photos, wondering if she'd cry just as genuinely when it was my turn. Everything fell apart a year and a half ago, at a family dinner for Grandma's birthday, when a fight broke out that nobody saw coming. Aunt Debbie, Mom's younger sister, who always drank a little too much at these gatherings and said whatever she was thinking with zero filter, got into it with my sister over something trivial. I think it was because my sister showed up late and didn't help cook. The argument escalated fast, the way it does at family parties, when alcohol loosens tongues and lets years of pent-up irritation spill out. And at one point, when my sister yelled something like "At least I'm honest with my husband," Aunt Debbie, already pretty tipsy, let out a sharp, nasty laugh and said a sentence that burned itself into my memory forever: "Honest? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, honey. Ask your mother how honest she was." The table went silent for a second. My sister turned red and started firing back that Aunt Debbie was drunk and talking nonsense. Mom sat completely frozen, fork halfway to her mouth, wearing an expression I'd never seen on her before. Not offense, not anger, something much closer to the panic of someone caught off guard. I didn't understand the weight of what I'd heard yet. I just felt something tighten in my chest, that feeling when your mind hasn't processed the information yet, but your body already knows something important just happened. The rest of the night passed in a tense, forced normalcy. Aunt Debbie, sobering up a bit, didn't bring it up again, apologized to my sister for being harsh, and everyone pretended nothing had happened. But I watched Mom out of the corner of my eye all night, the way she arranged the salad on the plates too carefully, avoided making eye contact with anyone, the way her laugh, whenever someone made a joke, came half a second late, like she'd forgotten how to do it naturally. We drove home in silence, and Aunt Debbie's sentence kept replaying in my head. How honest she was. I combed through my memory of Mom and Dad's marriage, looking for even a single clue about what that could mean, and found nothing. My parents had always seemed like a model of stability to me, maybe even a boring, too predictable kind of stability, one where I'd honestly never seen any drama at all. 2 days passed before I worked up the nerve to call Mom and just ask her directly. I called not because I suspected anything specific, but because Mom's strange reaction at the dinner table bothered me way more than Aunt Debbie's comment itself. "Mom, what did Aunt Debbie mean back there, at dinner? That thing about honesty?" I asked, as casually as I could, almost joking, expecting to hear something like "Don't pay attention to her, she just had too much to drink." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, unusual for Mom. Then she spoke in a voice I'd never heard from her before, low, broken, like she'd been carrying a stone in her chest for years and finally couldn't hold it anymore. "Come over. Please. I need to tell you something. I should have told you this years ago." I drove to Mom's that same night, my heart pounding the whole way, even though I still couldn't quite put into words what exactly I was afraid of finding out. She was sitting in the kitchen when I walked in. Not cooking, not doing anything, just sitting at the table, hands folded in front of her, like she'd been waiting for this conversation for a long time and putting it off for just as long. She looked tired, much older than usual, like those 2 days had drained some inner strength that had been holding up the facade. I sat down across from her, and Mom didn't start talking right away. She stared at her hands for a long time, searching for the words. "Your sister isn't your father's daughter," she finally said, as plainly and matter-of-factly as announcing the weather, though her voice shook on every word. "It happened before our wedding, before I married your dad. We'd broken up for a few months back then. I thought it was over for good. I was a lot younger and a lot more foolish than I ever gave myself credit for." She told me about a brief thing with a man named Frank, a co-worker from her job at the time, not love, more like loneliness and hurt after the breakup with Dad, which turned into something even she hadn't expected of herself. By the time she realized she was pregnant, Dad had already come back, they'd made up, and she made a decision that would shape the rest of her life: never tell anyone the truth, let Dad believe my sister was his biological daughter. "Your father still doesn't know," Mom said, and in that moment I saw just how afraid of that fact she still was, even after all these years. "He loves her exactly the same as he loves you. He might not even notice a difference, because for him, there never was one." I sat there trying to absorb what I'd just heard, while Mom kept going, like the dam had finally broken and there was no stopping that flood of words now. "I've lived with this secret every single day," she said. "Every time I looked at your sister, I didn't just see a child I love, I saw proof of my own infidelity, my own weakness. And I started compensating. Forgiving her for things I punished you for. Praising her more than she deserved. Being afraid that if I was as hard on her as I was on you, she'd feel like I didn't really love her. And that's exactly what I was afraid of, because in a way it was true. I didn't love her more. I loved her differently, out of guilt, not out of peace." "What about me?" I asked quietly, and the question just slipped out on its own, childlike and vulnerable, even though I was already in my 30s. Mom looked at me for a long time, steadily. "I loved you without any weight on it. Maybe that's exactly why it was so easy to be hard on you. I wasn't afraid that being strict would break something fragile between us, because there was never anything fragile between us. With you, I always felt solid ground under my feet. With her, it was this constant fear that the truth would come out one day and destroy everything." I sat in silence for a long time after that. I tried to piece together years of resentment, jealousy, feeling like I always came second, with what I'd just heard, and slowly, gradually, like a puzzle finally coming together, I understood, my not being enough had never been real. Mom's coldness toward me had never had anything to do with me. It had to do with her own fear, her own guilt, her inability to forgive herself for something that happened long before I was even born. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, once I finally found my voice again. "Because I was afraid everything would fall apart," she said. "Your father. My relationship with your sister. Your trust in me. And now I'm afraid the silence destroyed a lot more than any truth ever could have." I drove home late that night, and strangely, I didn't feel the anger or resentment I would have expected from myself. Instead, something much quieter came over me, a relief that felt almost physical, like I'd been carrying a weight on my shoulders for years that turned out never to have been mine at all. It's been a few months now. Mom and I talk more often these days, and strangely, much more honestly than ever before. The truth, painful as it was, somehow freed both of us from the need to keep pretending. Mom still hasn't told Dad, and I don't know if she ever will. That's not my call to make anymore. I haven't talked to my sister about any of this directly. She still doesn't know, and I'm not ready to be the one who changes that, at least not yet. Yesterday I was sitting with Mom in that same kitchen, drinking tea, and out of nowhere she reached across the table, took my hand, and said, "You know, I was always prouder of you than I ever showed." It was just easy to be proud of you, and loving her, that was painful. And I confused those two feelings for years. I squeezed her hand back, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel resentment, I felt something closer to peace. The understanding that this whole lack of love I'd carried inside me for so long never had anything to do with me personally. It had to do with someone who spent her whole life trying to forgive herself for a single winter, many years ago.